When we think of great philosophy, we usually picture someone in a quiet study surrounded by dusty books. But what if one of the most profound works ever written wasn't born there at all? What if it came from the raw, agonizing pain of a broken heart? Well, today, we're digging into how Søren Kierkegaard turned a single fateful decision into a radical new way of understanding life itself.
It sounds a little dramatic, doesn't it? Can a broken heart really create an entire philosophy? I mean, for most philosophers, the answer is a hard no. They're all about being objective, rational. But for Søren Kierkegaard, well, for him, it was the only way. You see, for Kierkegaard, his own life, and specifically his doomed engagement to a woman named Regine Olsen, wasn't some distraction from his work. It was the work. His heartbreak became a kind of spiritual experiment, a laboratory where his blood-bought reflections became the raw material for his most famous ideas. So let's set the scene. It all goes down in one fateful year, 1841. Kierkegaard is head over heels for Regina Olsen, and they get engaged. This should be the happiest time of his life, right? Instead, he just abruptly and honestly pretty cruelly breaks the whole thing off. This one act kicks off everything, launching him on a journey through 3 distinct stages of existence. Okay, so first up, he embodies what he would later call the aesthete. This is the life of seduction, of poetry, and of just endless possibility. So what's an aesthete? Basically, it's someone whose main goal in life is to avoid boredom at all costs. Life is just a string of interesting moments, intellectual games, and romantic thrills. But there's a huge catch. The aesthete runs away from the heavy responsibility of real commitment. And during their courtship, this was Kierkegaard to a T. He completely charmed Regine with his sharp wit and intellect, turning their romance into this beautiful, poetic drama. He was living in the thrill of the chase, this world of pure potential, without being tied down by any real promises. But then, they got engaged. The promise of marriage suddenly became very real. And just like that, the aesthetic life began to crack. Marriage demanded transparency, a real, lifelong commitment. And Kierkegaard was convinced that his inner melancholy, this spiritual darkness he carried, was something he could never and should never share with her. The aesthete's fun world of possibilities was on a collision course with reality. So, forced to make a choice, Kierkegaard tries to become someone else entirely. He tries to become the tragic hero. He decides he has to make a noble sacrifice. So who is the tragic hero? This is somebody who gives up what they love most for some kind of higher ethical duty. And the key thing is, their sacrifice makes sense to everybody. It's for what Kierkegaard calls the universal good. Think of a general who has to sacrifice his own soldiers to win the war. It's awful, it's painful, but it's noble, and most importantly, everyone gets why he had to do it. And this is exactly the part Kierkegaard tried to play. He convinced himself he was saving Regine from a miserable life with a dead man. So he intentionally became the villain. He acted cruelly, trying to make himself seem totally repulsive, all in the hope that it would push her away and make it easier for her to move on. He was sacrificing his own reputation for what he saw as her future happiness. But it just didn't work. The problem was that Noble's stoic feeling he was supposed to get from being the tragic hero, it couldn't quiet his heart. He had resigned himself to losing her, sure, but the love itself, that refused to die. The ethical path of the tragic hero just wasn't enough. It was a dead end. So this failure pushes him into his third and most famous stage, the night of faith. And this is where things get really weird, because he makes a leap, not of logic, but a leap straight into the absurd. Okay, so the key idea here is something Kierkegaard calls the double movement. It's a 2-step process. Step 1 is infinite resignation. This is basically what the tragic hero does. He fully, completely accepts his loss. He gives Regine up. It's over. But then, and this is the crazy part, the Knight of Faith makes a second move. He takes a leap of faith and believes against all logic, by virtue of the absurd, that he's going to get her back anyway. This comparison really makes the difference pop. The tragic hero's sacrifice, everyone gets it. It serves the universal. But the Knight of Faith, his motivation makes 0 sense to anyone else. It's a private, personal relationship with God, what Kierkegaard calls the absolute. And because of that, the Knight of Faith is completely, totally, utterly alone. And this is exactly how he lived out his days. To everyone else in Copenhagen, he was that cruel guy who broke a poor young woman's heart. He was a stranger, an outcast. But inwardly, secretly, He was holding on to this absurd belief that God would somehow restore everything he had sacrificed. His entire life became a walking paradox.
But living inside a paradox like that, well, it comes at a terrible price. And for Kierkegaard, that price was a lifetime of absolute, agonizing silence.
For Kierkegaard, this one word meant everything. Silence wasn't just a detail, it was the defining feature of the Night of Faith, and it became the central agony of his own life after he left Regine. So why all the silence? Well, first, it was literal. He never really explained himself to her, ever. He believed that to do so would be to drag his absolute spiritual duty down to the universal level, turning it into nothing more than psychological gossip. So he had to accept being the villain. And his deepest pain, his greatest agony, was knowing that the one person he cherished most would never, ever understand him. So you see, his entire philosophy wasn't just some abstract theory he cooked up. His life, this one excruciating decision, became the living proof, the real-life parable for all of his ideas about faith, sacrifice, and the absurd. And in the real world, he lost her. Regine moved on, she married someone else. But in the world of his philosophy, he actually performed that second movement of faith. He got her back. Not as a wife, of course, but as the eternal muse for his entire life's work. He lost her in the finite world, but he reclaimed her in the infinite. And all of this leaves us with a final, really powerful question. Kierkegaard turned his greatest loss into his life's meaning. It kind of makes you wonder, right? When we're forced to give up something or someone we truly love, what meaning might be hidden in that sacrifice? And what would it take for us to make that same leap of faith?